All right, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that you've always been interested in, which is travel.
Uh-huh.
You got a taste for traveling when you were very young,
Yeah.
and and you were going traveling at a time when very few, I think, of your contemporaries would have, or at least to places where very few would go. Tell us a bit about that when you were young.
Well, that all came from, let's go back to my grandfather who traveled the world and did all sorts of things and took my mother away with her cousin Ethel McAlevey from New York and Uncle Peter Joe, I think it was. And the four of them went traveling in Europe years and years ago when my mother was a young girl, like she might have been 19. And they went to the most beautiful, all the cities all over the world. And that was a great trip for all of them. Lovely photographs of that as well. And so my mother got a great taste for traveling. And then when she got married and had her children and got a bit of money whenever my grandfather died, Daddy didn't want to go traveling, but she did. And so she booked holidays every year. And then after, when I was about 5 or 6, I used to come home from primary school. And there she was with all the books out. And she said, I've been to Hong Kong, I've been to Honolulu, and I've been to South Africa today. Oh, that's wonderful, looking at all the books. So then she would say, I've booked us a holiday because your daddy doesn't want to go. We're going to Paris, and then we're going down to the south of France, and then we're going over to Italy, and then we're going to something else. So we headed off with all the different kinds of money that you had in those days for the countries. So we'd have francs and lira and pesetas and pound notes and travelers' checks. And we would go to hotels and I would be told to tell them the name of where we were staying and what our name was and do all the kind of work. And then we'll go up to the room and she would say, now you're to count that money out to make sure we're only allowed so much to spend every day. Now she was generous with how much we're to spend. But we were in Paris and she got diarrhea one time. And she said I had to go to get the chemist to explain with no French at all, diarrhea, which is not very easy to explain. And then they would give us medicine and help her along with that. And
Well,
then
how old were you when you were going to these European
I was about
cities?
14, 15, 16. Every year we went away somewhere on a great trip. Maybe the minute school was over, the beginning of July, we'd go away for maybe a week and, go to a couple of places. It mightn't have been France and Spain and Italy all in the one trip. It would be, different years, different places. But I remember going out in Paris with her and there was about 7 roads crossed across and a big roundabout and traffic flying everywhere. And instead of us jumping across wee roads and another road and another road, we headed right straight across the road into the sort of central reservation. And we're standing in the central reservation and she says, what are we doing here? This is where we always get killed. And she was a one-off, my mother. She was described when she was and at her wake as an enigma. And I didn't know what it was. But anyway, it was described to me. I learned what an enigma meant. We went to Italy to Forte dei Marmi. She used to go to places, first of all, find out where the local guest houses were, not posh hotels. And especially in Italy, because she spoke the language, she'd be ringing them up maybe in January or February to find out where the nice little places were. I went to the same place a couple of times at Forte dei Marmi. We went to the south of France to Menton, and Daddy actually came on that holiday. And he was speaking his French, which was La Fourquette and Le Couteau. And when I was at Coleraine, I was going, Daddy, that's not how you pronounce it. It's La Fourchette and La Couteau. And I was trying to teach him French. We went to Alassio, Viareggio.
Well, maybe I can stop you there because this is a good time for another question.
Hi, we are the Macaulays of Borneo.
I'm Gavin.
I'm Zati. I'm Max. Granny Haha, our question is, what is your favorite country you have ever visited and why?
Well, not many people are called Granny Haha, but I'm called that because I used to sing to Max, ha ha ha, he, little brown jug and I love thee. I didn't realize it was a drinking song. And thank you very much, Max and the Macaulays from Borneo. Italy, without a doubt, any part of Italy. I haven't been to every part of Italy, but with my mother, we were in, I think I've mentioned it, Forte dei Marmi, which is beside Viareggio, along the Mediterranean coast. Then we went to Alassio, Rimini, Riccione, and then we used to go up for day trips to Venice. So we were many times in Venice, looking at Venice. And then we were my mother used to go on holidays to places that I wanted to go to, got to one of them, to Lake Como later on, with Rosemary Aikenhead and her daughter and Louise. And we toured all around there. And then we went to the opera in Verona. Then when I got married, our honeymoon after Athens was Rome. So we had about 3 days in Rome. And then we went down to the Amalfi Coast and we stayed in a hotel right on the cliff edge where the swimming pool was way down low. We had to take a lift from the hotel down and then walk under the ground to get to the swimming pool, which was there. A beautiful swimming pool in the sea. So we have lovely videos of our honeymoon taken at swimming there. Then my mother took me to Pompeii and we went all around there. And then years later with Brendan on our honeymoon, that was another thing we did, was Pompeii. Fantastic places in Italy. And the people are so warm and family orientated and loved me as a child. And you spoke to you, talked to you and made you feel comfortable. And I loved the food. I loved pasta. I loved, learned to eat artichoke, dipping it in a bit of butter. I'd never had that before. Wonderful experiences. And then when we were with Marie and Brian, Marie was on holidays with us in Forte dei Marmi. Brian came down to meet her. They were only boyfriend and girlfriend at that stage. And we said, how did you manage to get down, Brian, with no language? I just went, choo, 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 Milano. And then I went, choo, 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 Forte dei Marmi. So then the story of going to the toilet was never part of your bedroom in those days. You just in a little hotel, you had bedrooms and then you had to go down the corridor. So you always had to have a dressing gown to go to the toilet. So we were learning Italian from my mother, like buongiorno, buon passeggiata, buon dormire, buon appetito, buon sera, buonanotte. So Brian knocked on the door. Marie had been in the toilet for far too long. And he knocked on the door and he went, bon shitio. So and all languages are lovely and funny, and you add an o or an a onto a word and you can maybe make yourself understood, throw your hands about and gesticulate. And then Brendan and I had been to Rome then many times after that. And I loved Rome, just loved, you would walk around a corner and there would be a big door, a big wooden door, and it'd be slightly open. And you would push it a bit open and you were in the most magnificent church with gold and crucifixes and paintings on the ceiling and the wall. And then we got into the Sistine Chapel and we had a trip all round the Vatican. We're in the very top of the Vatican, the cupola, where all the 12 apostles are. And we had an audience with the Pope when we were there on a weekend. Frank Hanna organised for us. And then years later, in 1979, when Mark was a baby, Brendan took U3 and Seamus McKillop to Rome. And Ambrose was there at the time, wasn't he? and he showed you around, and he was able to take you into little places that you would never have been before because he studied in there and spoke Italian very well. And then you stayed at the Irish College, and there was a swimming pool, and you were jumping in and out, but Suzanne was not allowed to swim in the pool in case any of the seminarians would see a girl in a bathing togs. This was all Brenton's rules. Then you went away to a beach area called Sparonga. And Brenton had his pocket picked on the bus, and he rang me. I have no money, and what do you do? And I had to get money sent out to the Irish College and to try and get it to him. And when he came back, he said, oh, I had loads of money, I had other money in another purse somewhere. And I thought, well, all the trouble I went to get that money sent out so as my children wouldn't starve. And Seamus McKillop just loved it. And Seamus has always nearly been part of our family. And sleeping like a baby was what he said about you children. And Seamus...
It wasn't about us, it was about Dad. He went in to see Dad in the room to wake him up. And there he was, sleeping like a baby.
I thought it was you people. See, you're great, Gavin, at the entertaining. So where else in Italy? Like, we didn't do much of the middle part of Italy. And then years later, for my 70th birthday, Rosemary Aikenhead, Elizabeth Connaughton, and it was to be Katie Connolly, but she couldn't go. So Nuala Zahran came with us, and we stayed in Viareggio, and then we were able to go around all those towns like, the ones on the hill where they had the horse racing round the side. Siena. And they used to have horse races go round the cent and a beautiful square down in a dip. Oh, absolutely magnificent place. God, it was beautiful. All those little towns in Italy are built on a hill, the church being the most important part of the town. And then there were nearly always walled cities so that they could secure the city. And often they were called like Santa this or Santa that, because they were able to spread the Christianity down through and stayed in all those towns. And, I was in America as well, and I was in Bali, which was beautiful. And then Brendan and I had a couple of 4 or 5 cruises, and I loved Alaska.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that because you once described your best day ever.
Yes. My best day ever was we had gone on a cruise from Vancouver. We started off and we'd met people that we knew in Vancouver. Went up to, cruised right up to the capital.
Anchorage.
Yeah, we didn't get as far as Anchorage, but we got into little various towns, old-fashioned-ish towns with like sawdust nearly on the pub floors. First thing we did was a big day. We got out and we had booked a train ride, and we went up where the gold had been, where the men had looked for gold. And it was a rickety wee old train with, like wooden and slatted joins between each carriage. When cowboys used to go onto those places and the train moved around, they were able to shoot across. One carriage met another carriage and there was like a balcony between each carriage. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm talking about in cowboy land?
Yeah.
And when you got up there, so I was loving this. This was great. But a huge drop down this side into a valley and then a big hill up the other side. And then they would give you the history of so many people died in the gold rush and horses died here, and you could see why.
Is this the Yukon? Is that the term you were looking for?
Yeah, well, I suppose it was the Yukon. I'm just not exactly sure. But anyway, there was a little bridge across, like wooden, slatted. And I thought, oh my goodness, look at that old-fashioned bridge. And the next thing, our train turned round and went over this bridge. And I thought, I'll never hold the weight of this train. And then down the other side of the valley. And we got right down to the sea. It was so exciting. And the next thing, we got out of that and we went into an office because we were going to go on a helicopter ride. We got into the office and we were taught, brace if you're going to go down and wear this life jacket and do this. And it was all a talk about keeping yourself safe. So we were getting onto the helicopter ride. Brenton didn't want to get into the front seat. So I got into the front seat beside the pilot. He was in the back seat with some other 2 people. There were really 5 of 4 of us, 5 of us. And the helicopter took us up round, and then he turned round and showed us this glacier. And then he went out a wee bit and moved around, very scary, but very exciting. And then he would drop down to the sort of valley and then back up again, and then over the top of the glacier, and then round and landed on like a matting thing. And we got out of that matting thing, out of the helicopter. Louise was with us. And we got out of the helicopter and got into a mush, like a thing with
A sled.
what do you call those dogs?
Huskies.
Aye, huskies. So about 6 huskies and into a sleigh and took along. And he didn't do mush. He said some other word. And it was just brilliant. And we went right across the top of the glacier and came round past a place where little puppies were in a dugout in the glacier. Little puppies and then bigger dogs in a bigger one. And we were able to stop and look at them. And then back again to the helicopter. And then into the helicopter and up and back and down to right at the ship. And got out of that and got onto the ship. And I thought, I have just seen so much. I couldn't tell you how wow the whole thing is. Like, that word doesn't describe it. The colour on the side of the glacier is turquoise. The coolness and the clearness. Now, where the dogs were was quite briny, where they'd cut the cutouts for the dogs. And there was bits where the dogs had peed on it and all that was briny. But the whole freshness of it and the excitement. Like, the train journey was so exciting to begin with. And that was a great cruise.
Very good. And where else did we go on holiday as a family? You said we went to America. We went to Spain a lot.
Yeah. You went to Spain. You never went to California with us. Sure you didn't. No, we went to Florida. And I think we went a couple of times to Florida, didn't we? And we were in New York with you.
I only recall one, Florida.
Well, I remember being in New York and us trying to get out of New York. We're so scared of the traffic. And
I don't remember that.
Well, maybe that was with Louise. Maybe that is wrong.
I remember trying to run away from home in London. Remember?
We were in a park. We had left our hotel bedroom. We were ready to come home. And we were in a park along by the embankment. And the next thing is Gavin had disappeared. And we were in a panic because we had to get the train out to get the flight home. And I don't know who found you. It must have been Brenton found you.
Well, I think I probably wanted to be found in the end.
Uh-huh.
Tell us a story about when you were in Spain on the beach with the 3 of us on your own.
You must have been about 1. Maybe you were 2. Suzanne must have been 3 and Cormac must have been 4. And we went out and stayed in the Hotel Florida, which was right across the road from the beach down in Fuengirola. And it was our first time in that part of Spain. Brenton and I had been down further south before that. But it was first time in Fuengirola.
What do you mean further south than Fuengirola?
We went to Guadalmina. He played golf in Guadalmina, 1972. I was pregnant with Suzanne and we'd left Cormac with Auntie Bid. And Cormac got his first tooth when I was away and I was swimming in the swimming pool, heartbroken that I hadn't been there for my child's first tooth. So we met that Pat Ryan there. He was some character. But that was on our own. Well, with Cormac. No, without Cormac. And then a couple of years later, we went to Fuengirola with the three of you. And Brent was very good at leaving me on the beach. You know, there's your buckets, your spades. They blow up their armbands and everything. So everybody's armbands were blowing up. Everybody was ready to relax. And I was just about to sit down on a sun chair when Cormac came over to me. And he said, Mommy, Louise has done a...
Not Louise, Mammy.
Mammy, Suzanne has done a poo-poo in her bathing togs. And I stood up. And I put my hand down. And it was huge and hot. And I said, oh, God. Now I have to go the whole way up. Oh, so we pulled ourselves. I pulled myself up, got on the hot sand, got off the hot sand onto the wooden slats to take her up, back up to the hotel to change her. And all the people were looking at me and watching it and feeling so sorry for me. Brendan, thank goodness, was there to look after the other two. So we were going halfway up the wooden slats and she was going, but Mammy, come on, Suzanne, come on. But Mammy. And I said, what? It's only a stone. Cormac had put a stone down her bikini bottom. And I took the stone out and all the people on the beach were laughing. Like there was nearly a cheer went up that it didn't have to go back up to the hotel. So we came back and I showed the stone to Brent and we roared and laughed at that. What a devil he was thinking of doing that.